Okay, so first trade of the week from Tuesday, the 21st of January. Monday was Martin Luther King Day. Markets were very quiet, so I just sat on my hands watching for hours and hours and hours with no setups. Tuesday came along and the markets had sold off in a very big way pre-market, and then it kind of continued into the open. But what we can see on the FTSE here is we put in a little bit of a base. So you can call it a triple test, you can call it a head and shoulders pattern, whatever you want to call it. The market then put in a fairly strong bullish bounce. It's quite similar to a trade I took a couple of weeks ago. So the market had sold off in a big way, but it had then put in a solid base at a very strong level. We'd had the bounce and then we'd had the pullback. So for this particular trade, it ended in a full position loss. Now, the main kind of thing I want to talk around is the psychology and the mindset of this. So it's a full position loss after kind of sitting on my hands all day on the Monday. That can hit you quite hard. So any losses can hit you quite hard. But what I mean is the losses can start kind of eating away at you in the wrong way. So you can start really kind of, trying to laser into the trades and you're looking for faults with the trade. Now, sometimes that's a good idea because you obviously want to correct your mistakes, but sometimes you just have to accept that the loss is just part of trading. Now, this was, for me, one of those losses. Now, kind of in hindsight, after the trade's completed, it's easy to kind of jump in and say, oh, but this. But at the time, we'd broken up above a very key level, we'd pulled back and we'd hit into a very strong support level. And I was expecting bullish continuation. When that happens, it's much more important to kind of position yourself than to paralyze yourself through fear or overanalysis and, you being really scared of having a loss, because that can end up being worse in the long term. So this one, I'm going to speed it up. So the little video is basically me when I was taking the trade. I'm going to speed this one up because it did take around about 15 to 20 minutes. Tiny little spike up, and then the market rejected, came down, and it took me out for a full position loss. Now, after you have a loss, it's very easy to kind of pull yourself back into your shell. So if you're anything like me, I don't think about, or my mind doesn't automatically kind of turn toward the more positive side of things. So when I have a loss, I had a fantastic week the week before, no trades on Monday, and then I had this loss. My mind doesn't turn to the really good week last week. It doesn't turn to the trades that I skipped yesterday. It would have been a loss. What it turns to is, if I hadn't taken this trade, I would still be at X. Now I'm down here and I need to make it back. That can kind of play into your next trades, and it can cause you to start making mistakes. And one of the things that I used to do a lot is actually in this video. So one of the things I used to do a lot is, if I had a loss from a certain area of the market, I would almost be so doubtful in my own analysis that I would refuse to take another trade from that area, because I would think, I've just had a loss, obviously I'm wrong, it doesn't make sense. I would skip the next setup and the next setup would work. So if you've ever gone through that, that kind of to and fro of, you take a trade, it's a loss, you skip a trade, it's a win, that is your psychology getting in the way. So for this one, later on in the day, what my mind should have been going over, and I'm talking back to like when I first started out trading, where I would just focus on the negativity, where I would just focus on the loss, where I would focus on the don't want to take another trade. What my mind should be turning to, and what I do now turn it to, is, was it a good setup? Is my analysis still valid in this area? If it was a good setup and my analysis is still valid, it's just a losing trade. I know through experience, and I know through trading in general, that there's always going to be losses. If you continue doing what you know works, it's going to make back the loss and it's going to push you back into profit. It's always up, down, up, down, up, down. It's unavoidable. And so for this one, when it pulled back and it put another setup in that zone, I was ready to get into it. Now, I was ready to get into it, and I was even more cautious on this setup because it had then kind of pulled underneath a little bit of a swing point that was created during my loss. But as soon as I got in, got my stop to break even, and then that trade pushed through into the profit that I needed. And it pushed into a really good profit. Now, if I had skipped the first trade, the profit would have been fantastic. As it was still really good, but it was making up the loss and then putting me back into profit. But sometimes that happens. With having a loss, it's kind of the most important thing is not allowing it to spill into your other trades and also just into your general life. I mean, I used to have a loss and it would follow me around for days and days and days, and it would affect my trading, it would affect my personal life. Sometimes the win is not going to be there quickly after the loss, and you're just going to have to kind of accept it and get on with it. The only way to do that is to be sure of what you're doing, to go over your trades, but not to be too hard on yourself. If it's a good trade, it's a good trade. That one didn't work out, the next one did. But sometimes I'll have the loss and that'll be me down for the day. Then the next day might be one of those days where I'm sitting on my hands. Then I'm down for 2 days. Then I might have another loss. And now I've got to make back 2 losses. That's all part of trading. And you have to realize that's going to happen countless times over your trading career. So you have to get okay with it. Because if you're not, you can't be a trader. If the losses are too much for you, and if you start thinking, I'm in this hole now, I've had 2 losses, I'm never going to make it back, there's no even point in me sitting at this chart anymore, you're never going to be able to get into the rhythm of just taking the losses on the chin, moving on to your next trade, and finding your profitable trades, which wipe out your losing trades. So that was me for Tuesday. Full position loss, but then I got back into a really good trade. It's fairly rare that happens on the same day. Usually I will take a loss and maybe I'll make back a little bit of it, or maybe there'll be nothing else for the day. But on this particular day, it was there, and the reason I was able to capitalize on it is because I didn't allow that loss to kind of spill over into the rest of the day and to paralyze me and to make me go into this kind of dark mood where I didn't do anything and I just sat staring at the charts, convinced myself it wasn't a good setup, and then missed a good trade. Okay guys, so that's everything for this week. As always, I hope that was helpful. I hope you're all having a really good trading week, start to January. I'm James Orr, and thank you.